Part 7. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 62. The sanitary facilities are in the private room on the second floor. Sira is about to walk in, and Anaxi, who is holding her arm, also wants to follow. She was a little speechless. Are you so interested in my personal hygiene? Or do you want to come first? Anna 11 also felt that her actions were a bit too much, so she shook off her hand. I'll go first, you wait for me at the door. Sierra took a step back obediently and urged, you'd better hurry up, my stomach is very uncomfortable. New. 2 minutes later, the bathroom door was opened. Sierra, you can. Anaxi's expression changed. Sela. Where have you been? There was no one outside the door, and the people who were supposed to be queuing up to go to the toilet were missing. Sira ignored the call coming from downstairs and walked slowly along the long corridor filled with oil paintings. I have to say that the exquisite vampire will create a spooky and rich atmosphere no matter where it is. Hanging on these characteristic stone walls are oil paintings depicting imperial territory and conquests for centuries. There were soldiers holding swords to chop off the enemy's heads, civilians being impaled on the sharpened wood at the top in the setting sun, and generals standing on top of the pile of bones, wearing majestic white scale armor and red cloaks. What are you looking for? The calm voice appeared in the empty and dark corridor, adding a bit of eeriness. Sira retracted her gaze from looking at the oil painting, and instead looked at an open black wooden door. Rosehill leaned against the door, folding her hands on her chest. Her neatly combed blonde hair and delicate face stood out in the darkness. I'm looking for you. She turned around and walked over. Dad said you were injured. I have to come and take a look. The girl's little hand from her coat pocket stretched out and grasped his bandaged hand familiarly. The warm temperature made Rosehill's cold fingers touch. Seeing that he didn't resist, Sierra used her fingers to pull the knot of his bandage. But who are you lying to? You were obviously fine when you hugged me, so why did you lie? He lowered his eyes and let the fingers pull his bandage. You don't think I will get hurt? The first time everyone came to express condolences for his injury, she was the only one who questioned her as soon as she came up. Is this a sign that a woman likes her? He was skeptical. As the bandages fell away, the thin fingers exposed underneath were intact, with protruding joints, pale and beautiful. Sierra raised the corners of her lips, wrapped the untied bandage around her fingertips, and looked up at him. When you carried me out, you squeezed my waist very forcefully, and I could feel your body temperature and fingers through my clothes. Following her words, Rosehill lowered his gaze to her waist, which was covered by the coat. It was wide and empty. That's all. Then do you want to try again? See if this intact hand has the same strength as before, Sierra asked with a smile. He narrowed his eyes and coldly rejected her deliberate seduction. Your sister is looking for you, go down. Sierra shook her head, while unbuttoning her coat, taking off her coat and putting it in her hands. The girl was only wearing a narrow-waisted dark green long-sleeved skirt with a fluffy hem and a waist that was no wider than the width of his hand. Sierra Rosehill stared at her closely, frowning slightly. Sira ignored the warning that was no longer a deterrent to her, and directly hugged his waist with both hands, pressing her soft body against him. I care about you very much, how can I not worry that you will get hurt? Rosehill was hugged by her and took a step back, and the black solid wood door banged against the wall. Sela? Are you up there? Hearing the movement, Anaxi's steps became a little faster. Sierra raised her head, pressed her chin against his stone-like chest, and asked softly, aren't you going to carry me in and hide me? What will happen if Anaxi sees us hugging each other? You want to hide it? He lowered his head, his eyes still cold. She likes you. Sierra moved closer to his lips, and seemed to be about to press on her, but what should I do? I like you very much too. Rosehill, who insisted on not wanting to be seduced, was still shaken. His eyes couldn't help but fall on her broken lips, and his wandering mind remained clear and indifferent because of the newly scabbed skin. A few seconds before Anna 11 appeared on the corridor, he finally put his arms around the girl's slender waist, held the doorknob with one hand, and entered the bedroom. The black wooden door was completely closed when Anna 11 appeared. Sela, she stood in front of the dark corridor and the bloodthirsty murals, and her voice became cautious. The ankle-length coat with a ring of furry fur fell to his feet, and the bandages slipped from his fingertips. Sierra leaned against the door panel, her lower back pressed against the cold palm, and her chest pressed against the young man's hard chest. "Do you think I'm telling the truth?" She raised her head slightly, breathing on his chin and neck. "Does the strength of the hug be the same?" Rosehill didn't use any force at first, but after listening to her words, her fingers unconsciously tightened and gently pinched into her waist through the fabric. Sierra pressed closer to him, and her chest began to pound. She blinked slightly and asked again, "Is it the same?" Yeah, he lowered his head and responded in a low voice. The footsteps outside the door are getting closer and closer, and the ambiguous atmosphere in the room rises. Rosehill was silent for a while, then moved her thin lips and asked, "Why did your lips get broken?" "I ate a lot of meat last night and bitten it." She licked her lips. The place where Eric bit her was scabbed, but it was uncomfortable even if it was tight. "Who are you eating with?" "This problem is a bit fatal," Sierra said in a roundabout way. "The hunters on the mountain, I have discussed with them to open a butcher shop." As soon as he mentioned the mountain, Rosehill's eyes that had just softened suddenly turned gloomy again. "Are you in need of this little money?" "It's missing." Sierra nodded. "I'll give it to you," he quickly answered. As soon as the words fell, the two people standing next to each other were stunned. One wonders why he is suddenly so generous, and the other wonders why he is suddenly so generous. "It's not without conditions," Rosehill immediately added. "A slave ship from the colony is about to arrive here. You come with me." Sierra did not expose his proud little temper and insisted on her attitude. "You saved me. I said I would agree to any of your requests, but I still have to open a butcher shop. Orion families are very strange. Pregnant women die in childbirth all the time, and now they need a lot of money to deal with a pregnant mother. I have to help because they are all my good friends." After hearing her words, Rosehill was not surprised at all. He just said mockingly, "Animals have always reproduced in the same way. There is nothing surprising about it." "What's reproduction?" Sierra corrected. "It's to welcome a little life. Coming. The update is usually at 12 o'clock, but sometimes it will be late, and the group will notify you. Just follow the group." After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 63. "It's life in exchange." Rosehill snorted coldly, "but I won't take it away." He pinched her chin with his cold fingertips, and announced his specialty in a high-pitched, silky voice, "I'm good at creating." "Sela, are you in there?" Anna 11 came to the door at some point and knocked on the door. The conversation stopped abruptly. Just across the door, Sierra raised her head and glanced back and forth at those charming dark eyes and lips. "Do you want to eat rose-flavored jelly? There are not many opportunities like this." She thought briefly, and the long handle of the door handle at her waist turned downwards. People from outside would come in at any time. Rosehill pressed the turning handle and stared at her, hiding in his shadow. He seemed to be waiting for her to take action if she couldn't hold on. Anna 11 found that the handle was stuck and pushed in tentatively. The black door did not move at all. Her intuition told her that Sierra must be inside and still doing some bad things. "Sela? Are you in there? Don't break into the Duke's room," she reminded in a low voice, but no one responded. "Miss Anai, what are you doing standing at the door of the master's bedroom?" Aldine quietly appeared behind her with his hands behind his back, and the firelight illuminated his pale face, which was startling. Anaxi calmed down and said, I'm just here to see Sira. She's not here. This is the master's bedroom. Aldine glanced at the solid wood door. Okay, sorry, I'm leaving now. Anaxi's steps gradually moved away. She obviously wanted to kiss him, but Sierra didn't take any action. Rosehill couldn't help but ask in a low voice, what are you thinking about? I wonder why you are pretending to be hurt. Sheila breathed a sigh of relief when she heard that no one was outside. You haven't told me the answer yet. He was silent. Whitman is dead, and someone from the capital will investigate. Rosehill calmly told her the truth about his murder. I killed him, but in order to avoid trouble, I needed to pretend to be sick for a few days. Sierra took a breath. Did you kill the director because of the race course? Those gangsters have already been dealt with. Compared with the first time he met her on the boat with her eyes full of fear, now she didn't look afraid at all that his hands were stained with blood, only surprised. Rosehill thought that this change should have started when he saved her twice and 3 times. He withdrew his hand that was still squeezing her slim waist, turned around, walked to the bedroom desk by the window at the back, and poured some liquor into the glass. Whitman tacitly allowed his people to invade my assets. He held the wine glass and turned to look at her. He cheated me out of a lot of money. So he simply killed people. I can't say 100% that this behavior is right, Sierra answered honestly. Rosehill took a sip of wine. The light outside the window highlighted his fine jawline, and a light shadow covered the bulging and rolling Adam's apple. No one can take possession of my belongings at will. It's what I can't get also good at destroying. Sierra's back felt cold and the hairs stood on end. No matter how you hear this, something feels wrong. Seeing that her eyes were wide open and frightened, Rosehill thought for a moment and put down the cup. Whitman allowed gangsters to collect protection fees for several years across the town and supported 3 mistresses. Do you still think he should be alive now? Sierra licked her lips. It's wrong to allow gangsters to burn, kill, loot, and do bad things, but having 3 mistresses is okay. She hesitated for a while. Isn't this a crime worthy of death? Maybe it's just his personal preference. Maybe, he was vague. Sierra didn't know that he had an emotional misophobia. Thoughts flashed through her heart. She picked up the bandages and coat on the ground and walked over. Putting her coat back on, she took his hand and passed the bandages around again. Why are you willing to tell me the truth? Didn't you ask? He asked calmly. I thought you would lie to me, for example, to lure me to take care of you. After tying a beautiful bow, Sierra stood up on tiptoes and kissed Rosehill's pale side face. What a pity. The soft lips touched the cheek, carrying the rich fragrance of a girl. The kiss spread the soft and fragrant smell in his nose, making him unable to control himself. He raised his steps and followed her. You smell really strong today. Sierra pushed open the door and asked narrowly, do you want me to kiss you with a mouth that tastes like barbecue? The person following behind remained silent. She turned around and winked at him ambiguously. It's not impossible, after all, I like you so much. Rosehill moved his eyes away and returned to being cold. I don't consider having a wife, but if you want any position by my side, I will agree to it. I know, I also said I don't want those positions. Walking through the dark corridor, Sierra held the escalator and went downstairs. You don't need to like me, it's enough for me to like me, but just in case one day. She paused and turned to look at him. I don't like you anymore. Somehow Rosehill's heart stopped beating, and it was full of unhappiness. Back to the living room where the charcoal fire was lit, everyone except their family had left. Anaxi watched the two of them appear side by side, with stiff expressions, unable to fake a smile. She knew that they must have been behind that door just now, just by looking at Sierra's hateful smiling face. The weather in the mountains could change at any time. Originally, Lizzie had not planned to have dinner here. They stayed for 2 hours before preparing to rush home, but Wally's rain came down at any time. There was a violent storm, it was getting dark quickly, The mountain road was muddy, and their car lights went out due to poor contact due to the heavy rain. In desperation, the group had no choice but to return to the villa. Sierra was wrapped in a coat so that she didn't get caught in the rain. Anaxi, who was wearing a white lace blouse and skirt next to her, was completely chilled. The clothes were wet and clinging to her body, and the translucent clothes had graceful curves. "Shall I give you my coat?" she asked kindly. "No, I'll just go and dry it in front of the fireplace." Anaxi blushed, walked up to Rosehill and said embarrassedly, "I'm causing you trouble, Mr. Rosehill." Sierra. After being taken in, Lizzie and Josie sat back on the sofa. There was no electric light on the mountain, and the candles were still flickering on the top crystal lamp and wall lamp. The record player was playing current pop music, and Aldine was busy in the kitchen alone. Only then did Mrs. Josie suddenly realize that something was abnormal. There is only one male servant in such a big villa, and he does almost all the work. Lizzie reminded her to pay attention. The Duke didn't come here originally. It's normal for him to come by boat with only a male servant. Why doesn't he hire a few more, or ask servants from the capital to come over? How can one be so busy? Get used to it. Aldine, who was accused of being too busy, endured the anger of having to cook for humans. His frozen figure was almost invisible as he wandered around the kitchen table. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 64. Rosehill was still sitting on the sofa in front of the fireplace like a staid statue, her dark eyes looking indifferently at Anaxi, who was warming herself by the fire in front of her. She is nothing like Sierra, with a weak appearance and a blank heart, very boring. Seeing him looking at her, thinking that she would be the only pure land in the vampire's heart, Anaxi blushed slightly. What do you think of this piece of music? Generally. How about the Moss musical? The most famous singer in the capital, the aria is the most beautiful I have ever heard. Tacky, who will listen to it? Rosehill's words were not only cold and hurtful, but also heartbreaking. Sierra listened with her ears pricked to listen to Anaxi's constant yawning. She sat obediently on the side holding a teacup, muttering in her heart that she would starve to death if she didn't eat something. Rosehill, who heard her voice again, turned his head and looked at the girl whose eyes were empty with hunger. He subconsciously calmed his tone and said, "Sierra, go find Aldine. There are biscuits and fruits in the cupboard." Sierra stood up happily. "You know everything I want." She obediently went to find Aldine, who had already taken out the biscuit jar and fruit basket from the closet after hearing the owner's needs in the living room. There was a piece of colored paper taped to the glass cookie jar with Calida's sincere condolences written on it, and the fruit basket was brought from her home. Rosehill is quite good at making the most of it. When she returned to the living room with a glass jar full of bent cookies and an unpacked fruit basket, she heard Anaxi start pouring oil on her because she couldn't find a topic to talk about. Yesterday, the playful Sierra and Eric made an appointment to go to the mountains to play together. They didn't come back until the next day, which scared me and my family so much. Anna 11 saw her coming and said with a helpless look, "You recently went deep into the mountains. It happens too often in the mountains and it's so unsafe. Eric will take care of me. His big family takes good care of me." Sierra sat back on the sofa and said innocently, "What's more, I went in yesterday because I had to help them with something." "What happened to their family?" Lizzie asked. "Just some money," Sarah responded. "I'll take care of it." When Rosehill heard about Eric, he remembered the boy who smashed the window in anger and was afraid that he would eat Sierra. He was a werewolf who had not yet transformed. He frowned, not liking the topic. After eating a few biscuits, Sierra picked up a fruit knife and a red apple and asked, "Mr. Rosehill, Dad, Do you eat apples? Can I peel one for you too? Let me do it, you fill your stomach first. Anna 11 came over immediately. All right. Sira turned the tip of the knife to face herself and handed over the handle. Anaxi held the handle of the knife with a smile on her face, and the curve of her lips had a hint of meaning. She exerted a little force on her wrist, causing the blade to slice open her fragile skin sideways when she pulled away from Sira's fingertips. Hiss. It felt like being cut open by a sharp piece of paper, causing severe pain in the first second. The moment the blood seeped out, Sira endured the pain and stuffed her fingers into her mouth, looking at Anaxi in shock. So cruel. Clang. There was the sound of a glass bowl breaking in the kitchen. Lizzie and Josie, who noticed the abnormality, turned around and saw Aldine standing quietly in the living room, with vegetable leaves hanging on his hands, and his dark eyes were hungry and greedy. There were several doors from the kitchen to the living room, but he appeared here a few seconds after the sound fell. Dinner is ready? Or did something happen in the kitchen? Mrs. Josie felt inexplicably fear in his eyes. Aldine didn't answer her. He stared directly at the remaining blood on the fruit knife in Anaxi's hand and said in a strange voice, "Someone is injured." Rose Hill leaned on the sofa, his muscles under his suit shirt tensed up. He put his palm on the armrest of the sofa and rubbed a corner of the wooden armrest. The powder and small pieces of wood fell on the edge of the fireplace without causing any movement. The mellow aroma of blood was very light, but it was enough to attract the desire to eat from the two vampires in the living room. What was more surprising to Anaxi was that she knew they were bloodthirsty creatures, but no one pounced on them and bit Sira's neck directly. "Get out," Rose Hill ordered Aldine, who was about to reveal his red eyes. There was a burst of lightning and thunder, and the strong wind blew open the window. The wet rain and earthy wind blew in, spreading the sweet blood even wider. Seeing that his master was able to withstand the temptation, Aldine stepped back with a stiff face. Both Josie and Lizzie found it very strange, whether it was the Duke or his servants, everything was strange. "Sierra. I'm so sorry." Anaxi hurriedly threw away the knife and sat down on the sofa. She pulled her hand out of her mouth, letting the blood continue to flow out, and turned her head to find her handkerchief. Rose Hill's attention was entirely focused on that delicate and attractive finger at the moment. His sharp fangs began to itch uncontrollably, and his emotionless face also showed aggression. "Anna 11 hopes to send her away directly today." Sierra pushed her away. "I'll go upstairs and flush myself." She held her injured finger, trying to block Rose Hill's cannibalistic gaze, and hurried upstairs. "Did you scratch your sister?" Lizzie looked at the blood on the tip of the knife and her face darkened. Anaxi said guiltily, "I didn't expect that she would hold the knife edge so tightly." As the evil stepsister, her death was caused by Rose Hill sucking her blood dry because the blood was too fragrant. This stupid setting. Sierra ran into the bathroom on the second floor, locked the door, turned on the faucet and washed away the blood on her hand. The cold water rushed over her fingertips, and the slightest pain made her bite her lower lip. Hiss. There was another stinging sensation on her lower lip. Sierra quickly raised her head and saw the frightened girl in the mirror. The pale pink scab on her lip was cracking open again and bleeding out. Was she going to be sucked into a mummy in advance by the plot tonight? Knock knock. There was a sudden knock on the bathroom door, which startled Sierra and asked, "Who?" "Open the door." It was Rose Hill's voice. Sierra's heart nearly stopped. To open or not to open? If it wasn't open, he could easily remove the door handle and break in to suck her dry. If it was opened, he could just walk in and suck her dry. It seems like the ending is the same. "Sierra, open the door," Rose Hill said calmly, with a hint of command in his tone. Sierra was heartbroken, pulled off a towel and pressed it on her fingers, licked off the blood droplets from the corners of her lips and opened the door. Rose Hill stood in the darkness at the door, light and shadow floating on him, and he could see that he was holding a small medical kit that looked dated. Rose Hill, she was surprised that he still had this. The young man stepped through the door and lowered his head, just in time to see a small drop of blood slowly seeping out on her soft lips. He had already built himself up, but his inner defenses collapsed instantly because of this seductive picture of eating. Remember to vote. Lots of comments, boo. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 65. Boom. The bathroom door was slammed shut by him with one hand, and the swaying wall lights on the wall were extinguished. In the lightless darkness, thunder struck from the window and ushered in a brief ray of light. Syrah's senses were instantly amplified to the extreme. She looked at the other person's red eyes with ruby light so close at hand that her body trembled with fear. His eyes actually changed color. A bright red and bloodthirsty color. Clang. It was the sound of Rose Hill throwing the small medicine box on the cabinet behind the door. Syrah tried to run around him, who was not feeling right, but her waist was grabbed by a hand that reached out from secret, and her whole body was easily lifted up and carried onto the sink. She sat down on the marble sink with her buttocks, her feet were easily clamped by Rose Hill, and her whole body was curled up in his arms, unable to move. Rose Hill? What are you doing? Syrah tried to resist the young man's shoulder, which kept leaning towards him, but she was as strong as a lamb and couldn't push the big stone at all. The living space is getting smaller and smaller, and the cool breath of death sprinkles her cheeks that are turned away out of fear. The towel wrapped around his fingertips fell on his knees, and the blood squeezed out from his fingertips stained Rose Hill's suit collar. Attracted by the blood, he suddenly took the girl's hand on his left shoulder, held it and pressed it to his lips. A strange feeling came from the injured finger, accompanied by pain in the fingertips from sucking blood. Spring thunder rolled, and Syrah slowly turned her stiff head. Taking advantage of the dim light outside the window, her fearful eyes suddenly enlarged and turned into shock. Only half a foot away from her face, the pale and handsome vampire lowered his proud head, his golden hair hanging on his smooth forehead, and licked her blood with restraint and earnestness. Although this dark and gothic weird scene is very beautiful, Syrah was really scared to tears when she was in the scene. Most of his injured fingers were under his venom-filled teeth. If he was not careful, something big would happen. It hurts, she grabbed his collar, her voice filled with tears. Rose Hill, my wound hurts. The trembling sound of the girl's cry made the young man slowly raise his eyelids. His dissatisfied scarlet eyes saw the tears falling down her cheeks, flowing to her lips, where the sweet smell became more tempting and rich. He was finally willing to let go of her injured finger. Before Sierra could breathe a sigh of relief, Rose Hill held the girl with her waist against the mirror in front of her with one hand, lowered her head and kissed her lips fiercely. As long as she didn't bite her neck or bite off her fingers, and just make the wound on her mouth bigger, she could survive, so Syrah endured it. But even if she was tossing and turning like chewing gum, she couldn't bear it as time went by. There was probably no one like her who fainted from excessive blood loss just because she was cut with a fruit knife and her mouth was a little bit broken. The girl's limp body fell into Rose Hill's arms. He hugged her with both hands, and the veins on his forehead popped out, but he did not continue the crazy madness that he had just lost his mind. The bathroom door was opened, and Sierra was carried out by him, and instantly appeared in the guest bedroom on the third floor. Aldine appeared next to him with a tray, and the glass was filled with thick dark red liquid. Owner. The blood bags he went to the hospital regularly to get would come in handy. Rose Hill immediately drank the blood in the cup, and his throat, which was burning like a branding iron, was relieved. His scarlet eyes narrowed slightly, and he barely maintained his calmness. I'm going to settle the guests downstairs. Aldine carried the tray and stepped back out of the door. He also needed to eat urgently, but he had to settle the 3 people below. Anai was fully expecting the news that Syrah's throat had been bitten off and died. When Aldine invited them to have dinner first, she deliberately asked with pretense of worry, "Where is Syrah? Is she okay?" The Duke took the medicine box and went over. She has already fallen asleep in the room, Aldine replied calmly. The atmosphere here was very strange, and Lizzie was worried. I'm going to see her. It's not right to let the Duke do such a small thing. Aldine didn't stop her. After dinner, you can go to the room on the third floor to visit her. Is she so angry that she can't come down to eat? Anna 11 blamed herself. Although it was just a small wound, it was indeed me who accidentally scratched her. Aldine glanced at her and said, Miss Sarah doesn't want to eat now. Anaxi said, okay, we also have a driver, Joey, please bring him some food. Rose Hill, the host, did not show up during the dinner. The three of them hurriedly finished their meal and went to visit, but Sarah just cut her finger and went to bed. Anna 11 stood at the door of the room. Several wall lamps illuminated the big bed. The girl lying in the center of the bed had pale lips and regular chest rise and fall. Rose Hill was nowhere to be seen in the room. Lizzie and Josie were relieved, but her eyes were full of disappointment. This was not the result she wanted to see. Sierra was still alive and well. Anaxi attributed all this to Rose Hill's strong self-control over blood, which prevented him from taking Sierra. Aldine took in all the micro-expressions on her face, and he began to doubt the seemingly innocent girl in front of him. In the middle of the night, the heavy rain stopped, and Sierra woke up from the cold while lying in the quilt. The ancient clock downstairs made a clanging sound. She slowly opened a slit of her eyes, and in the dark shadow in front of her eyes, a dark figure sat quietly on the sofa. Rose Hill, Sierra rubbed the pillow and shrank into the quilt due to the cold. When the young man heard her call, he moved slightly like a statue, leaned forward and looked at her. Cold, I want a fireplace, she whispered her request like a cat. I thought she would jump up in fright and ask him why he did that, but that was all the girl said. Rose Hill remained leaning forward for a few seconds and stood up. Sierra couldn't quite hear what happened next. Drowsiness and fatigue swept over her ears and eyes. She could only vaguely hear Aldine's voice, and the burning fireplace quickly raised the temperature in the room. The quilt became warm. Sierra, who was fast asleep again, revealed her head from under the quilt, her eyebrows furrowed due to the cold relaxed. Rose Hill sat on the edge of the bed, slender fingers brushing away the hair stuck to her face, her eyes searching deeply. Anaxi, who had been freezing all night, sneezed twice in succession as soon as she came out of the bedroom. In the guest bedroom opposite, a rosy-faced Sierra opened the door and walked out at the same time, and with her came the heat from the fireplace. The hot breath suddenly hit Anaxi's face. She was just wondering why the corridor was warmer than the bedroom, when she glanced at the burning fireplace in Sierra's bedroom. Her voice suddenly turned jealous. Where did you get the charcoal fire? It burned all night long. Obviously the bedroom was still cold when she came to see her last night. Sierra blinked and asked doubtfully, didn't you? I thought the Duke had prepared charcoal in every guest bedroom. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the shure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 66. Anna 11 gritted her teeth. No, it seems that the Duke is only prepared for you. Then he's so kind to me. Sierra looked at her from head to toe and smiled softly. Would you like to go to my bedroom to warm yourself first? You look like you're going to freeze. No need. Anna 11 held her breath, turned around and left. Sierra followed her leisurely. You hurt my finger on purpose yesterday. Don't you have anything to say to me? I didn't mean it. I've already apologized to you. Anna 11 stopped, turned around and whispered, you should be more generous. Everyone knows that it was a misunderstanding. I just wanted to help you peel the apple. Sierra raised her lips, walked up to her, put her hands on her shoulders and reached her ears. Okay, but thank you for doing this. My mouth was almost broken by kisses last night. Anna 11 took a step back and saw that her lip wound was indeed more serious than before. Her cheeks, which were frozen white with anger, turned red, "Don't go too far." Sierra chuckled lightly, turned around and went down the stairs. Aldine prepared a sumptuous breakfast and greeted Lizzie and Josie cordially when she came down. Lizzie said concernedly, "You didn't even have dinner yesterday." "It hurts too much to cut my finger. It hurts so much that I have no appetite, but I'm very hungry now." Sierra sat down on the other side of him, very close to Rosehill, who was sitting on the main seat. "Mr. Rosehill didn't have dinner yesterday either." She turned her head to look at his eyes, which had returned to black, a little embarrassed. "He was just taking care of me." Lizzie seemed to smell something between them, raised a smile and said, "Speaking of which, Mr. Rosehill saved you several times. You should come and thank him more often." Anna 11 heard this as soon as she came up, and she became sulky with a sullen face. Josie spoke in time, "That's right, but Sierra should also learn more etiquette with Anna 11. In the future, when she goes out with the Duke, the two of them will get along better." "I think I'm pretty good like this," Sierra said half coquettishly. "What do you think?" She touched the young man with her leg under the table, signaling him to say something nice. Rosehill maintained a standard sitting posture, and her dark eyes were a little warmer because of her little teasing. "No need to learn." The clear and cold voice made Mrs. Jiaoqian smile indulgently, and made Anna 11 lower her head and say nothing. Mr. Vampire, who has always been an insulator to women, finally got the idea to cater to her. Sarah's smile was bright and dazzling. After breakfast, it was time for them to set off home. Anna 11 wanted to build another wave of goodwill in front of Rosehill, but when she thought about how she had talked with him on many topics from last night to now, her goodwill remained unchanged at all, and he even went to send warmth to Sierra. "Get angry." She squatted down to say goodbye to him and got into the car. Sierra was the last one to leave. She stood beside Rosehill and finally asked the question that stayed in his mind all night. "Why did you eat my finger yesterday and kiss me so hard?" She raised her injured hand to touch the bruised and blackened lips. Thinking of the scene last night, she felt that her cheeks were about to burn. "What do you think I'm doing?" Rosehill asked quietly. "Stop the bleeding." Sierra raised her head and said, "But you are such a big man, why do you still use this baby method?" Rosehill. He couldn't help but remind her, "Don't you think I'm sucking your blood?" Sierra licked her lips and said sheepishly, "You are obviously teasing me, and I almost fainted from your kiss." Her eyes were bright, and she even had a little more desire and expectation when she came to him, "But don't do this in the future, at least don't do it in front of Daddy." The girl didn't go according to her expected outcome at all, and Rosehill was speechless. Sierra glanced at the car that had been waiting outside the door for a long time, took his wrist and walked behind the door, avoiding everyone's eyes, and kissed him on the face for the last time. "I'm leaving, remember when the time comes. Come pick me up." The collar of the coat trimmed with white fur rubbed against his neck, making it feel furry and itchy. Rosehill stood there for a long time without moving. The sunny mountain road was muddy, but it was not difficult for the car to walk. Sierra breathed a long sigh of relief in the fresh air, and her mind finally no longer had to strain. After what happened last night, she understood that Rosehill was not willing to kill her now, but especially wanted her to know that he was a vampire, so that there would be sufficient reason to transform her into the same kind. This was a big improvement, enough to show that her status in his heart had indeed risen a lot. He liked her a little, but it was far from the level of love. Only when one day she revealed that she knew Rosehill's identity, and he was reluctant to kill her, and even agreed to let her live as a human being, would she be able to escape from this death line. Sierra lowered her head and looked at her fingers casually. Of course, Anna 11 must not get involved in this. Her original idea of pushing the vampire to Anna 11 was completely overturned this time. She has to control these three male protagonists. As for how to escape reasonably in the future, she will take it one step at a time. It was still early when we got home, and the servant said that two marine experts had gone to the laboratory early to study mermaids. After getting off the car, Sierra told the driver Joey, "Wait for me here for a while, I want to go out." "Where are you going, miss?" Joey asked. "The butcher's shop on Holkier Street. I promised to send money to Eric today." Anna 11, who got out of the car later, heard the conversation between the two and immediately had a plan in mind. She just took the money and went to send warmth to Eric first. Wouldn't Sierra lose her favorability level? And the declining family affection value in her system can rise again. Sierra pretended not to notice that Anaxi had deliberately slowed down because of eavesdropping, and quickly returned to the room to let the servants take care of her to take a bath and change clothes. The three male protagonists have 3 dog noses. If there is any smell left on her body, the next one will smell it. It's really troublesome to keep your body smelling clean all the time. After changing into a simple printed white dress, spraying some orange-flavored perfume on her wrists and applying it behind her ears, Sierra went to the laboratory with her semi-wet hair loose. There was no one at the door, and there was a muffled sound of heavy objects falling to the ground inside. As soon as she pushed the door open and entered, a huge black fan-shaped tail fin arced across her eyes and struck towards the half-dead Edward in the corner. "Lawside," Sierra yelled urgently, "stop." The sharp and razor-sharp tail hung above Edward's head, barely stopping. The mermaid, half lying on the ground, turned around and stared at the girl at the door with her fierce lake blue eyes. A servant carrying a change of sheets saw her standing blankly at the door and asked aloud, "Miss? What happened?" "No, I'm fine, I'll help the expert," Sierra replied, stepped into the room and locked the door. "Who said I was Kevin? I just broke it at the right place." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 67. The floor of the entire laboratory was filled with salty seawater. A lot of information about the ocean was scattered on the ground, and the papers were soaked. The dorsal fin and tail fins of Luoxied stood up like explosive hairs. The dark black scales near the top of the tail fin curled up around a broken blood hole, and blood gurgled out. Sierra couldn't believe what was happening. Thomas, who fell on the table with a bloody head, groaned and squeezed out a few words from his throat in pain. "It attacked. Let's leave quickly and get help." Rox turned his head and yelled something at him that Sierra couldn't understand. The ancient and mysterious language instantly took away the last of Thomas's consciousness and plunged him into a deep coma. Sierra took a deep breath, undeterred by his revealed abilities. She approached cautiously, squatted down slowly 1 meter away from him, and said softly, "Lawside, stay quiet and don't kill anyone. Put your tail down, and I'll help you, okay?" The ferocious mermaid turned back again. He lowered his eyelashes and returned his gaze to her face. His eyes, like a lake, were filled with an unpredictable dark light. "Where have you been?" Complaints of emotional instability, laced with deep loss and pain. Sierra's heart trembled, and she realized that she had been neglecting him for too long during the past 2 days. She said with full apology, "I went to help a friend the day before yesterday. I was supposed to come back to see you yesterday, but Dad, again, I was temporarily asked to visit a duke, but there was a heavy rain last night and I was trapped in the mountains." "Are you injured?" He slowly turned around on the floor, and the fish tail covered with a layer of mucous membrane also moved away from Edward's head, revealing a Nagant revolver not far from his hand. Seeing the gun soaked in water, Sierra's pupils shrank, and she understood where the bloody holes on Roxide's body came from. Without caring about anything else, she stood up, stepped over the mermaid's tail, came to his side, knelt down and hugged his shoulders. "You actually shot him here?" She turned around and asked Edward angrily. Edward said weakly, "Thomas and I just wanted to draw some of his blood." He suddenly became violent. "We had no choice but to shoot him out of self-protection." His head was groggy, and he didn't notice that Syrah was overly protective of the mermaid. "You should wait for me to come back instead of taking action without permission." Syrah lowered her head to examine Roxad. His white upper body also had a wound caused by a bullet penetrating on his left shoulder blade. Blood left his arms, flowed down his webbed palms, and pooled on the floor, dyeing the white skirt around her knees a rose color. "I'll help you take care of your wounds." Edward thought this was what Syrah said to him, so he reluctantly raised his hand to reach out to her, but saw the girl with her back to him trying to hold the mermaid up and sitting on their table covered with precious information and historical records. "Miss Sierra, what are you doing?" he called her with difficulty. "You have to go out and ask for help." He didn't understand why the mermaid was so docile as soon as it came into her hands, but if he didn't get treatment, he would bleed to death from shock. "Can you tell him to shut up first?" Syrah did not look back, only focusing on looking at the wound on Logosied's shoulder. Seeing the distressed look on her face, the mermaid's eyes gradually softened, and she used words to control the human being to faint. Sierra searched on the table and found some medical instruments that Edward and the others were going to use to draw blood and remove scales for Roxad, as well as an alcohol lamp that was not broken. She wanted to get the matchbox that had fallen on the windowsill, but as soon as she stepped out, the mermaid's strong black tail hooked her legs. He grabbed her back with a hook of his strong long arms, resting his chin on her shoulder, full of grievances. "You want to leave again? I'm going to disinfect the knife and take out your bullet. It's still in your body. How can you heal the wound on your own?" Sierra leaned against his chest, helplessly bending her arms and touching the face on her shoulder. "The matchbox is on the windowsill. Can you wait while I get it?" Logosied slowly let go of his hand, his eyes never leaving Syrah, who was walking past. After she lit the alcohol lamp on the table and put the knife on it to bake, she had time to look up at him. Blood blooms like flowers on the mermaid's fluorescent white muscles, silver wet long hair wraps around the body, and the fish's tail bends and hangs down on the floor. The picture in this chaotic laboratory is poignant and thrilling. Sierra sighed softly. "I was gone for 2 nights, and you got yourself into this." Luxad's fingertips touched her scabbed lips. "How did you get hurt?" His current communication with her has completely broken through the superficial language barrier, and he even seems to have a higher IQ. It seems that he learned a lot from the books brought by these experts. "I bit my lip while eating, and got angry again." Syrah held the burning knife and pointed it at the wound on Lucid's shoulder. Her fingertips were trembling a little. "I'll be honest with you, I've never treated someone like this. I watched people on TV do this." Logosied didn't know what a TV was, and his mind was drawn to the words that she had never treated someone like this before. He gently put his hand on her waist. "Get it out." The hot knife cut open the mermaid's skin, which had a thin layer of mucous membrane. Blood gushed out from the cross made by the knife. Syrah swallowed silently, used medical tweezers to open the skin, and slowly grasped the bullet stuck inside. "Pull out." She concentrated on the movements of her hands and didn't notice that she was completely wrapped up in the mermaid's arms. There was a smooth tail touching each other through the skirt behind her thighs, and the long arms that passed through her waist separated each other very far. "Close." Logosied lowered his head and buried it in the crook of her neck without saying a word. The dorsal fin connected to the neck at the back stood up and then softened, which was enough to prove that the process was really painful. The bullet fell to the floor, and Syrah's tense heart relaxed halfway. "All that's missing is your tail." She held Roxad's face with her bloody hands, and put her fingers against the seam of his lips, trying to stuff it in. In the flash of lightning when he opened his mouth obediently, Syrah had a flash of inspiration. She suddenly removed her hand, cupped his cheek instead and kissed him. Roxad's expression was subtle, and the webbed claws placed on her waist tightened instantly, welcoming her initiative with great enthusiasm. Sierra almost lost her mind because of this entangled kiss, but before she got lost, she put her hand on his chest and pushed him away. "I don't mean it right now." Panting, she hurriedly lowered her head and kissed the merman's injured shoulder with moist lips. The soft lips contained liquid that could heal wounds, which made Logosied's heart tingle. He lowered his head and said, "Sela." After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Goicheng. Chapter 68. She could obviously use her fingers to smear the wound, but she kissed her so carefully with her lips. The medicine had a very good effect. There was a cool feeling on Sira's lips, the tightness disappeared, and the bleeding from the mermaid's wound stopped immediately. She raised her head and licked her lips in front of Logosied. My lip was injured too, so it helped both of us. She defended herself with good reasons, but her seductive look made Luxid's eyes ignite with desire. "I can help you again." He lowered his head, nudged her cheek with the tip of his straight nose, and wanted to kiss her lips. "Your tail keeps curling around me. Doesn't the wound hurt?" Sierra tilted her head back, not wanting to satisfy him all at once. If she kissed him at any time, she would get tired of it as time went by. Unexpected teasing was the best. "And you haven't told me why you almost killed these two people." She pushed his face away, holding the knife and bending down to check the bullet stuck in the scales. The broken fish scales were sharp and hard. Fortunately, the bullet did not penetrate deeply because of the scales, so Sierra easily picked out the fragments with tweezers. Meeting Rox's expectant eyes and slightly parted beautiful lips again, she put her finger in without thinking, and after being licked by him obediently, she took it out and applied it to the wound on his own fish tail. I have to say that the skill is indeed incredible. After all the wounds were taken care of, Sierra completely relaxed and allowed the mermaid to pull her in for another hug. "Tell me why you hurt them." She leaned against his chest. Lucid pointed to a few pieces of paper soaked in water on the ground. "This is not the first time they hunted us." Not the first time, Sierra was surprised. She remembered how excited the two experts were on their first day, and how professional the tools they brought were. Thinking of the conversation between the two humans in his ear just now, Logosied's eyes became gloomy and his face became expressionless. 100 years ago, a lost mermaid was stranded and her body was sold to them for cutting and selling. 100 years ago? That was their father's generation, right? They had already studied creatures like you. Sierra was shocked. If this were really the case, the acting skills of these two marine experts who knew the inside story of mermaids would also be great. "It's the trappers." After they discussed and studied it, they released me into the ocean and followed me to find Shaki Island. "Shakwi? Is this a gathering place for you mermaids?" Sierra continued to be shocked, so these two experts really concealed their purpose. They had long known certain characteristics of mermaids and wanted to hunt and sell them on a large scale. Lizzie definitely didn't know about this. She looked silently at the two people who were seriously injured and fainting on each side. "You have to leave tonight, before they wake up." "Can't I kill them?" Logosied lowered his eyes and said in a dissatisfied voice. "If you kill them, you will implicate me," Sierra said helplessly. "These are two famous experts invited by Dad. They have a certain social reputation. People from the police station will definitely come to investigate this matter." Lucid was thoughtful, and after a moment asked her an irrelevant question: "Do you like legs?" "Sierra." Sierra was stunned. "Didn't you ask before?" "They all like it." The mermaid shook her tail, which started to dry out soon after she came out of the water. "Okay." Sierra touched his angular face and whispered, "I'm going to go out and call a few helpers now, and then get these two people to the hospital." Logosied enjoyed her touch and said, "You come with me tonight." Sierra's hand paused, then dropped under his gaze, and shook her head gently. "Don't come back after you leave." This is what she said sincerely. If the mermaid is willing to obey her and never come back, she will have one less way to die and only need to deal with the remaining two. Unfortunately, things went off the rails. Luoxt, who had just become a little happier, drooped the corners of his lips and his voice deepened. You don't want to go with me, why? Sierra asked with a puzzled look on her face. Why do I want to leave with you? Your home is in the ocean and my home is on land. Shack Island is very good, you will like it. Lugozide's face completely sank, and his silver hair hung down on his face. That was the habitat of mermaids, a forbidden area for humans, and he really wanted to take her there. So there was no need to ask why he sneaked into her room that night. He really wanted to run away with her. Sierra stroked his face, slowly put her arms around his neck and hugged him. You know I'm not willing to let you go at all, but you belong to the ocean, you must return to your own. Go live, this is your only chance to be free. I promised you that I would give you your freedom. She kissed the side of his face. You saved me, and I saved you again. We are now settled. Knock knock. Miss? Are you in there? Master Lizzie asked you to go down for lunch. Sierra had to break away from Lugosied's arms and said hurriedly, lie down on the floor and pretend to be injured. His webbed claws didn't have time to grab the girl's hand, and he only watched her run to the door to open it, shouting in panic, go and call the doctor. The mermaid attacked two experts, and they were both seriously injured. Seeing the blood and water on the wooden floor in the laboratory, as well as the mermaid lying on the ground and two experts who did not know whether to live or die, the servant quickly pulled the wet Sierra out and screamed loudly for someone to come. Things happened so fast. After receiving the news, Lizzie wanted to ask Joey to drive her to the hospital. But when she learned that Joey had just driven away with Anaxi, he was so angry that he had to call the hospital himself. I called him and asked them to send a special car to pick him up. Where did Anaxi ask the driver to take her again? She ran out at the critical moment. Josie comforted the angry Lizzie, it was Sierra who was going out, and I don't know how it was replaced by her. If she had to endure her temper again, Chiao-Chi would also curse her daughter in her heart for being dissatisfied. She knew very well who she was looking for. The chaos at home had no impact on the unsuspecting Anashi. She was holding a half-full bag of gold coins in her hand and was happily getting out of the car and walking towards Eric, who was already waiting at the door of the butcher shop. The boy looked particularly handsome today when he stood in the sunshine. You have a new jacket, Eric. Anna 11 stepped forward to say hello gently. Eric, who was waiting for Sierra, saw her and subconsciously looked for the girl in the car behind her. When he saw no one, he asked, didn't you and Sierra come together? Anaxi's smile faded a bit, and she said helplessly, no, she doesn't plan to help you. Eric frowned, and before he could ask anything, she handed him a money bag. You can have a crazy crush on me, but you can't ask me to add more. / After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 69. There are 20 gold coins in here, Anaxi said shyly and pretending to be generous. I heard that you are in trouble and lack money, so you should take the emergency first. Eric's face turned cold. Who told you that I was short of money? Anaxi was stunned and then subconsciously added, Sela said last night that you are very short of money. Eric said coldly, that's why she won't lend me money now. Hearing the anger in his tone, Anaxi nodded hastily, yes, but it doesn't matter, you can use mine. I don't have the money to pay you back. Eric stared at the money bag in his hand, and his handsome and sunny face had a hint of gloom. Anna 11, who was intent on getting back into her good graces, didn't notice at all how wrong the werewolf boy in front of her was. She grabbed the sleeve of his jacket and said gently, no need to give it back to me. We are friends, and friends should help each other. As soon as he finished speaking, the character panel belonging to Eric suddenly jumped in front of Anna 11's eyes. The family relationship value that originally had 20 cells left suddenly shrunk to less than 10 points, and the number bar finally stabilized at 5. The family affection value that had fallen once dropped by 15 points again, reaching a precarious position. The shyness on Anaxi's face froze for 2 seconds, then turned into disbelief. Why did it fall again? Why? It's obvious that she's just here to send warmth this time. What went wrong? Eric shook off her hand and threw the bag full of gold coins back into her arms. I never told Sierra that I was short of money, and she never said she wanted to help me. I just opened a butcher shop in partnership with Gail, and I'm just here today to help them take care of the store. But, she told me that you were short of money. Anna 11 held the money bag and defended helplessly. It was obvious that she had been tricked by damn Sierra again. Eric said coldly, you framed her again and again. What exactly do you want to do? I didn't frame her falsely. She deliberately said that you were short of money, so she asked me to give you money. Anna 11 tried to explain, but the young man in front of her didn't believe her at all. Even the 5 points of family affection were lost due to her sophistry. The resentment has been reduced a bit. My people and I never ask for charity. Gale walked up to Eric at some point and put his arm around his shoulders. I have accepted Miss Anai's kindness. Now drive the car back and pick up Miss Sarah Barr. Joey's gossip fire was burning in his heart as he took everything into account. He drove the car behind Anna 11, coughed twice and said, Miss, there are many people on the street, why don't we go back first? She framed Sarah yesterday, and as a result, she received the Duke's pity and slept in the fireplace all night long. She wanted to come here to give her some warmth today, but she was tricked by Sarah and all her family ties were lost. Anaxi was completely angered and cried, tears falling down, Eric, I just want to help you once without asking for anything in return. I really have no other intentions. Eric was not touched by her tears at all, and only said coldly, there is an identity gap between us. Keep your distance from me in the future, Miss Anish. What about Sarah? Isn't it charity if she gives you money? We are an investment partnership, Gale said, you should be kind to your sister. Anaxi was so filled with panic that she almost lost the image of crying. Before she came, Eric, you would always talk to me through the fence, but now you don't even look for me. Eric responded calmly, your lies make me feel like I don't even need to be a friend anymore. Her gaffe attracted the attention of many people on the street. Joey felt that something would happen if this continued, so he had to open the door and invite people to the car. Get up, miss. Sella is the bad woman. Anaxi leaned against the car window, she is worse than me. Eric stood by the car, his handsome eyebrows warmed by Sierra's name, you and her will always be different. This sentence was another severe blow to Anaxi's fragile heart. After everyone left, Gale asked, have you found the person who always spreads gossip about noble ladies behind his back? Eric nodded, I went to the bar and asked, and the driver of Mawson Manor is a regular customer there. That driver just now, Joey, Gale looked at the direction of the car, why didn't you drag him down and threaten him? Eric took off the hand on his shoulder, he still has to pick up Sierra. Let's find an opportunity to beat him up in the dark alley. Gale patted him on the back and said, you are so thoughtful. The servants worked together to throw the mermaid back into the water tank. The Nagant revolver on the floor was picked up by a servant, wiped clean and handed to Lizzie. They actually opened fire in the house, and I didn't even hear the sound. Mrs. Josie covered her chest in fear, it's too dangerous. A silencer has been installed. Lizzie, who was well informed, held the gun and looked at it, and said thoughtfully, it has no sales channels. Sierra, who was standing against the wall, asked, so what do you mean, Dad? Lizzie looked at her, I didn't pay attention when they took out the gun before, but the model and design of this revolver are only available in the arsenal in the capital, and they are for soldiers. Sierra was stunned for a moment, and then she felt confident, they are Marine experts, why are they connected with the arsenal? I don't know. Lizzie put away the gun and asked concernedly, are you okay, Sarah? The hem of her skirt was stained with rose-colored blood, and she looked very embarrassed. Sierra shook her head. I'm going to change clothes. This blood is from the mermaid. A special car from the hospital came to the manor to pick up the two experts who were seriously injured and unconscious. It also picked up Sierra, who was hitching a ride. She took 2 showers and changed 2 sets of clothes in one day. By the time she arrived at the butcher shop, it was already afternoon. Eric was nowhere to be seen at the door of the store. She got off the car on the way, and a figure popped out of the cake shop next door. Sierra. Eric stood under the shed in front of the cake shop and waved to her. Sierra walked over quickly and said apologetically, "Sorry Eric, Anaxi just asked Joey to drive the car away, so I got here late." "I know, that's why I'm waiting for you here." He glanced at the wound on her lip that was about to heal, and said softly, "Your injury looks much better." His mouth was chewed open by a werewolf boy, chewed by a vampire duke twice, and finally healed by the mermaid's saliva. This kiss has almost turned into a complete industrial chain. Sierra threw away the messy thoughts in her heart, touched her lips and echoed, "Yes, it was really strange that day. I actually bit myself like this." Eric blushed. "Sorry." She asked strangely, "What are you apologizing for?" "I accidentally got it myself." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 70. Well, Eric opened the glass door of the cake shop. "Come in, I'll treat you to a cake, and then we'll solve the store problems." "I should treat you to a cake, have you forgotten?" Sierra walked into the store and asked the waiter for 4 cakes of different flavors. Eric pulled out the chair next to her and sat down. "Anai just came to see me." Sierra put the blueberry-flavored cake in front of her. She had already expected it, but she still put on a suitably surprised expression. "She borrowed the car and came out to find you." "She came to give me money and told me you weren't coming," Eric answered truthfully, turning to observe her expression. Sierra's mouthful of blueberry cake almost got stuck in her throat. Ahem. Her eyes suddenly widened and she said in disbelief, "How could she lie?" "She hates you." Eric gently wiped the cream from the corner of her mouth. "You have to be more vigilant and be careful in everything you do." Sierra pursed her lower lip and sighed lowly. "I don't know why she always likes to target me, but thank you for reminding me. I will be careful." Soon, she finished the 2 pieces of cake in front of her and glanced at Eric's plate again. "Do you want some strawberry flavor?" He offered his share to her. Sierra took her spoon over and dug out a piece without any politeness. "Just take this bite, I'm full." Eric waited for her to finish, then silently picked up the spoon where she had dug it, dug out the cake and put it into her mouth. Sierra didn't think there was anything wrong with him doing this, but instead thought it was a big improvement. She smiled and asked, "Is it delicious?" The sweet and sour strawberry mixed with cream is particularly delicious." The butcher shop's rental delivery was quickly sorted out. The boss said hello happily and left, leaving Eric looking at the empty shop. "I will be hunting in the mountains these 2 days, and I may not come down to find you." Sierra nodded. "I understand, you have to prepare meat for the opening." Eric closed the shop door, walked up to her, hesitated for a moment and said, "I want to explain to you that the recent rumors are not what you heard." Sierra blinked. "Rumors? I didn't hear any rumors." She has been so busy these past 2 days that she really doesn't know what new gossip is coming out on the street. Eric lowered his eyes and whispered, "About me riding on 2 boats. You haven't been out on the street for 2 days, and this gossip has already spread like this? There is such a good thing." Sierra raised her eyebrows, raised her face and raised her voice. "Are you in 2 different boats?" "I didn't," Eric retorted. "That's false. I've never done anything so immoral." Sierra felt as if she had been scolded, and she looked away from his face with a guilty conscience. so it must be rumored that you were hooking up with me and Anna 11 at the same time, right? Otherwise, how could you explain to me that last time he didn't even send me to the gate of the manor when he came down the mountain? I'm worried that this will cause trouble to you, Eric said softly. I don't want you to misunderstand. What's the misunderstanding? She tilted her head. Eric couldn't help but touch her face. I'm afraid you'll think I'm in two different ways and won't be friends with me anymore. If you don't want to be friends, what else can you do? Sierra let him touch her face, and her soft voice was particularly alluring and sweet in the empty butcher shop. Eric's hand touched the girl's lips, and his rough fingertips lingered over the wound that was about to heal. I don't know, Eric's voice was hoarse. I just want to say that it's not like what is said outside. I have never done anything bad. His mind couldn't control it at all, and he was playing back and forth the passionate kiss with Sierra during the campfire party. Her lips looked too tempting at the moment, and he wanted to just kiss her. Probably because of the pain from being rubbed, Sierra simply opened her mouth and bit his finger with her white teeth. Eric instantly felt that his body was being concentrated by electric current, and his fingertips were numb. He lowered his head and took a breath. Sierra. This action didn't last for a few seconds before Sierra pushed his hand away. She stood up on tiptoes and approached him, and when she was about to kiss him, she stopped, intertwining their breaths. It won't cause trouble to me, because we are friends, so it won't cause trouble. I only believe in you, Eric. She tilted her head and finally kissed the boy's raised Adam's apple. The young werewolf boy's eyes were blurred until she said she had something to do and left, filled with a strong desire to kiss her. The good boy who knows how to restrain himself will one day burst out with desire, and Sierra just needs to wait for him to tear off the only layer of disguise between the two of them with his own hands. After finishing the matter at the butcher shop, Sierra called a car to Khalida's residence in the evening. As the daughter of a bank president, she sits alone on the street in an entire 17th-century Breton-style building. It is a product of the old century, with smooth plaster walls and large square glass windows, which let in lots of light. Very good. You said you want me to help you bribe the crew at the port to rent a boat. Khalida put down the teacup and said excitedly, you want to let the fish go? So fast. Well, he almost killed 2 experts today. They won't let him live until dawn, Sierra said half-truthfully. I can't rent a boat and buy off the crew. Can you help me? Of course, I said I would help you, and I am more than happy to do so. Sierra discussed with Khalida at her home for an hour and made a plan. It was exactly 7 o'clock in the evening when she rushed home. At dinner time, the atmosphere at the table was bad. Anashi was nowhere to be seen, only Josie and Lizzie were sitting. Dad, is there a call from the hospital? Are the 2 experts okay? Sierra asked. We're not out of danger yet, Lizzie replied, and when she sat down to start the dinner, he added, I plan to fire the Robinson family's hunters. Sierra's hand holding the knife and fork paused slightly. Are you because of the rumors in the town? They have served us for a long time. I don't want the 2 daughters in the family to get entangled with a hunter. If you have a good relationship with the Duke of Rose Hill, don't have frequent contact with a hunter. Sierra was silent for a long time, then put down the tableware. I'm afraid not, Dad. He is the first friend I made here, and he was also the savior who pulled me out of the sea. She moved her chair and stood up, her eyes firm. He saved me in the most critical moment. Half of my life is because of him. You have no right to choose who I contact. Sela. Don't forget your marriage. No noble can accept the close relationship between his wife and Orion. Lizzie was angry. When he learned that the Duke of Rose Hill, the richest duke in the kingdom of Larini, was in love with his daughter, he would start to worry about her marriage and seize the opportunity that could help his family reach the top of wealth. First of all, I forgot to explain that I don't write cool articles. I can't write any plots that serve the sake of coolness. I can't write straight ball slaps in the face. If you want to read this kind of article, please leave quickly. Secondly, for those who leave negative reviews, you spent money on me. I can explain to you why I wrote this and accept your reasonable suggestions. You see, it's free and you'll lose your shit after leaving a negative review. I'll only give you the deletion and ban package. If you want to watch it, watch it. If you don't want to watch it, click the cross button. Don't mess with my mentality. I have a very glassy heart. Also, after dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 71. Sierra twitched the corners of her lips. You don't have to make the decision on my marriage, and I never count on you. You'd better take care of Anna 11 when you have time. She straightened her back and turned around, leaving the restaurant without looking back. The relationship between father and daughter, which had just warmed up a little, was now frozen to the freezing point. Lizzie put down the tableware angrily and lost her appetite. At night after a heavy rain, the air that pours in when you open the window is always very fresh, and Wally's climate always rains continuously and the vegetation is lush. Sierra lay at the window and glanced at the black pearl-colored night sky. The woods in the distance were a shadow darker than the sky. The lights in the manor went out one after another until the lights in the servants' room disappeared. She calculated that the time was almost up, quietly opened the door and exited the bedroom, heading towards the laboratory. Logos Yed in the water tank heard the sound of the door lock turning and came out of the water early to wait. The bars on the top of the water tank had been replaced with stronger ones since he had destroyed them. Unfortunately, the mermaid was still as strong as paper and could be easily destroyed. Sierra, he shouted toward the door. Sierra came in from behind the door holding only a candle. The candle swayed in the breeze, and the small area of warm light illuminated the girl's face tenderly in the dark night. Keep your voice down. She put the candlestick on the windowsill, rolled up the sleeves of her ruffled nightgown, moved the ladder to the water tank, exhaled and raised her head and said, "Can you come down by yourself? I'll catch you below." Logos Yed looked at the petite girl opening her arms to him from below, and the light brown hair scattered behind her was imprinted with a layer of pale gold by the not dazzling candle light. She was like the only ray of light blooming in the cage at this moment. Logos Yed got out of the fence and leaned down. His black tail fin swung and jumped out of the water. He jumped from mid-air to the girl on the ground who was waiting for him to embrace. Bang! After a muffled sound of the fish's tail slapping against the ground, the mermaid hugged Sierra who was standing on the ground. The moment he threw her down, he turned over and smashed his back onto the ground. The embrace full of water vapor, the cold and smooth body was close to her body. Sierra fell onto his chest, her hands on the sides of his head. Looking at the smile on this magnificent face so close to her, her heart trembled. "I thought you would use your fish tail to step down the ladder. You must be thinking that the scene will be funny." Logos Yed raised his hand to twist the hair that was scattered around her face behind her ears, but there were still a few disobedient strands of long hair falling on his cheeks. Looking at the pair of lake blue eyes that were about to suck her in, Sierra smiled softly. "Well, I thought you would perform acrobatics for me. Next time, I will come down," he said in a low voice, as if it was a promise to her. Sierra's heart suddenly jumped. The mermaid lying on the ground put his webbed paws on the ground and sat up together with the girl who was sitting on his waist. She slid down to his tail, and was caught back in time by a pair of arms. The moonlight peeked out from the clouds at some point, and its silvery light passed through the glass windows, dispelling more darkness in the room. "The car will pick us up soon and take us to the port." Sierra stretched out her palm and put it on Logos Yed's smooth chest, stared at his chest and said softly, "I asked my friends to rent a boat, and they will pull you away. Coastal. It's time for you to go home." She was a little reluctant. The mermaid in front of him was silent for a while, then his webbed hands touched the side of her neck and held her face. "There are countless jewels and silks on Shaki Island. It is far away from all dangers and disputes in the world. Come with me, Sira. It is full of seductive sounds, every beautiful syllable is played to the extreme, and a small number of people who cannot understand the unique language of the mermaid tribe are also added. Except for Logosyed, all the gloomy scenes in front of him have changed. Sarah felt the beautiful scenery and sea breeze there, as well as countless shipwreck jewels from the dream catcher woven by the mermaid. She was pulled into the illusion by his voice, and her pretty face gradually revealed a look of yearning. But her hazy eyes swayed. La sighed, I won't go with you. Sierra gently pressed her forehead against his chin and said in a daze, what I need is never jewelry and satin. You don't have to show me those mountains of jewelry stacked on the beach to tempt me. If she is really a greedy person, then she will definitely take the bait, but unfortunately that is not what she really yearns for. The mermaid's charm had no complete effect on her. A disappointed question came from above, that's not what you want? What do you want? What do you want? Sierra was confused for a moment, probably just, survive. The sound of cars running over the gravel road gradually approached. She raised her head, her eyes completely clear, she's here. Sierra climbed off his fishtail and smoothed the wet folds of his skirt, wait for me, I'll open the door. She picked up the candle, walked down the stairs quietly, walked through the dining room to the kitchen and opened the door. Khalida's car was already waiting there, and besides her there were two muscular people in the car. They are all my servants, don't worry. Khalida deliberately lowered her voice with excitement, where is your mermaid? Take off your shoes outside, don't leave any traces of dirt on the floor at home, don't make any big noise, and then follow me quietly. Sierra took 2 steps back. The 2 servants who came to help were stunned when they saw the silver-haired mermaid sitting in the laboratory with the moonlight behind her. Khalida, who had already felt his beauty, managed to regain her consciousness and whispered, are you sure you want to release him? Are you really not considering selling him to me? It would be perfect to keep him in a fish pond. He eats people. Sierra's simple words gave up all of Khalida's thoughts and brought back the 2 servants who were in a daze. They assumed a tense posture and cautiously approached the mermaid who was staring at them motionless. Sierra walked over and said, they are here to send you off, Luxid. With her soft words of comfort, the merman was lifted up and walked out obediently. The escape process went smoothly. Under the cover of darkness, they arrived at the port that Khalida had bought in advance. There was no one here, except for a small boat docked at a corner of the pier that attracted the least attention from the big ship. The mermaid was carried onto the boat. Sierra, who was wearing a thin dress, rubbed her arms and followed her into the boat. After getting on the boat, Khalida even put a blanket on her. The water near the pier was full of fishing nets, and the boat with only one gas lamp was rowed precariously to the middle of the sea by a servant. Sierra silently held Rasid's hand, and he turned his face sideways and stared at her without saying a word. Half an hour later, the ship stopped as thick fog spread over the sea. It's almost time, you can leave from here, Khalida's servant said.